My mother is obsessed with me having kids, so much so. She is willing to ruin my life to make sure I give her grandchildren. My mother is the most baby-obsessed psycho I've ever met. Starting when I was 8 years old, she made me and my sister Daniela wear these pregnancy simulation suits for hours every single day. 20 pounds of sand strapped to our stomachs while we practiced breathing exercises and watched birthing videos. If we complained about back pain, she'd add more weight and tell us real mothers don't whine. She even made us practice breastfeeding with these creepy little dolls that would cry if you didn't hold them right. While I spent every session plotting my escape, Daniela embraced it as if it was her one true purpose. She'd waddle around the house with perfect posture, rubbing her fake belly and talking to it out loud. By the time she turned 16, she was begging mom to let her be a practice surrogate for her infertile work friends. And when she turned 18, mom threw her a massive party. Not for graduating high school, but for signing her first surrogacy contract. Everyone was calling her a blessing and an angel, while I sat in the corner feeling like I was at a livestock auction. Within 3 years, Daniela had carried 3 babies for 3 different couples. Each time she came home from the hospital, mom would parade her around town like she'd won a Nobel Prize. Look at my generous daughter, giving the gift of life. Meanwhile, I was getting a biomedical degree, volunteering at women's shelters, and learning about bodily autonomy. But none of that mattered. Such a waste of a perfectly good uterus, mom would tell anyone who'd listen. Her sister has blessed 3 families while this one hoards her fertility for herself. The most terrifying part was watching Daniela deteriorate. After her 4th pregnancy at 22, she could barely walk without pain. Her hips were destroyed, she had constant infections, and her hair was falling out in chunks. But when I tried to talk to her about it, she grabbed my hands with tears in her eyes. Maria, this is what I was made for. My body is a vessel for miracles. Why can't you understand that? That's when I knew she was gone. So I played along just enough to keep mom off my back. Told her I was considering pregnancy, wore looser clothes to family events, even Googled fertility clinics in front of her, all while secretly taking the LSAT and applying to law schools across the country, LOL. I specialized in reproductive rights and medical ethics, spending years helping women escape forced pregnancy situations. By 28, I was finally making a difference. So when mom invited me to Daniela's celebration dinner, I figured it was just another pregnancy announcement. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out it was an effing intervention. Sweetie, you're not getting any younger, mom announced while Daniela sat beside her, belly swollen with pregnancy number 4. So I've taken the liberty of starting your fertility treatments. Before I could respond, she pulled out a syringe filled with hormones. Just a little boost to get those eggs flowing. I jumped back, but Daniela grabbed my arms from behind. Please, Maria, just try it. I've already found the perfect couple for your first baby. I screamed and fought, but mom was already coming at me with the needle. That's when I noticed the other syringes on the table. They'd been planning this. As mom plunged the needle into my thigh, I felt the cold liquid burn through my muscle. Within minutes, my vision blurred and my ovaries felt like they were on fire. Through the haze, I heard mom on the phone. Yes, we've started the protocol. She'll be ready for harvest in 2 weeks. That's when I realized this wasn't just about family pressure anymore. This was trafficking. I woke up in the ICU with ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome so severe they nearly had to remove everything. My mom stood towering over me. We only brought you here because we wanted to save your womb, was the first thing she said. I pressed the red button for the nurse. She took one look at my mom and escorted her out to perform private examinations. As soon as we were alone, I felt even worse because she wrapped her arms around me and asked if I was okay. I broke down crying because the whole thing made me realize how terrible my mom actually was. I ended up opening up to her, and she seemed completely shocked by what I said and asked me to repeat everything. The next hour consisted of me completely unloading everything. The surrogacy, the favoritism, the abuse. As soon as I was done crying, she called hospital security to ban my mother from my room. And I didn't know it at the time, but with the help of just one nurse, I was about to make my family pay. The nurse returned 20 minutes later with a uniformed officer who introduced himself as Detective Rodriguez from the domestic violence unit. He pulled up a chair beside my bed while the nurse adjusted my IV. Maria, I specialize in cases involving reproductive coercion and forced medical procedures, he explained, pulling out a small recorder. What your mother did constitutes assault, and based on what the nurse told me, this might be part of a larger pattern. Through the glass window of my room, I saw movement in the hallway. My mother was trying to push through the emergency exit door, her face twisted with rage. She spotted me looking and pressed against the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear at first. Then she exaggerated her lip movements. Ungrateful batch. My phone started buzzing on the bedside table. Detective Rodriguez glanced at it as message after message popped up on the screen. May I? He asked, and I nodded. The texts were all from Daniela. How could you involve police? Mom was helping you. You're destroying our family. All she wanted was for you to experience motherhood. Detective Rodriguez set the phone down carefully. This isn't the first complaint we've received about forced fertility treatments. There's been a pattern, particularly involving medical practitioners at certain clinics. He paused, studying my reaction. Your mother, does she work in the medical field? My stomach dropped. She's a receptionist at Blessed Beginnings Fertility Clinic. His expression darkened. A hospital social worker knocked and entered. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes who froze when she saw my chart. Maria Gonzalez? Your mother is Patricia Gonzalez? You know her? The social worker hesitated, clutching her clipboard tighter. We've had some interactions. Let me get you some resources. She fumbled through her papers, clearly uncomfortable. Detective Rodriguez made notes while I described the intervention dinner. The social worker kept glancing at the door, and I noticed her hands shaking slightly as she handed me pamphlets about domestic violence resources. I need to check something, I said, reaching for my phone. I logged into my medical portal, scrolling through recent documents. There it was, dated 3 months ago, right after I'd casually mentioned to mom that James and I were thinking about our future. My medical power of attorney had been changed to my mother. This isn't my signature, I said, showing them the document. The handwriting was similar to mine, but slanted differently, the way someone might write if they were tracing. Before anyone could respond, a man in an expensive suit strode into the room. I'm representing Patricia Gonzalez. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding my client's daughter's medical care. That was fast, Detective Rodriguez muttered. The lawyer smoothed his tie. Maria is clearly suffering from hormone-induced psychosis. Her mother was simply trying to help when Maria became violent. We're requesting an immediate psychiatric evaluation. I'm not psychotic, I protested. The hormones in your system suggest otherwise. Ovarian hyperstimulation can cause severe mood disturbances, paranoia, even hallucinations. The hallway suddenly filled with noise. Daniela appeared with 5 small children clinging to her maternity dress. Aunt Maria needs help, she announced loudly to anyone who would listen. She's been struggling with jealousy issues for years. Hospital security arrived, trying to maintain order as the children started crying. Daniela bounced the youngest on her hip while rubbing her pregnant belly with her free hand. I grabbed my phone to call my law firm, needing backup. The receptionist answered on the second ring. Oh, Maria, your mother called earlier. She explained about your situation. Don't worry, we're handling your caseload while you recover. What? No, I'm fine. I need to speak to... The partners think it's best if you focus on getting better. Your mother said the breakdown was quite severe. I hung up, my hands trembling. Through the window, I watched my mother pull something from her purse, showing it to her lawyer. Keys, my apartment keys, my car keys. She started reciting something, and though I couldn't hear her, I recognized the pattern. She was listing my work schedule. Monday, she has court at 9. Tuesday is client meetings until 6. Wednesday, she volunteers at the women's shelter. The lawyer nodded along, taking notes. James burst through the door, still in his work clothes. Maria, I got your text. What's... But Daniela intercepted him him in the hallway, placing a manicured hand on his arm. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw her gesture toward me, then touch her temple in the universal sign for crazy. She pulled out her phone, showing him something on the screen. The nurse who'd been helping me earlier returned with a plastic bag. "These are the belongings you came in with," she said, but her expression was troubled. She pulled out several glossy brochures from Blessed Beginnings Fertility Clinic. "Those aren't mine," I said immediately. She unfolded one of the brochures. Inside was a consent form for egg retrieval, dated last week. The signature matched the one on my power of attorney document. The hospital administrator appeared in the doorway, a thin woman with a practiced smile. "Given the circumstances and the family's concerns, we think it might be best to transfer Maria to our psychiatric ward for a full evaluation, just as a precaution." Through the glass, my mother smiled. Detective Rodriguez stood up. "She's not going anywhere without a court order." "Of course," the administrator said smoothly. "We're simply considering all options for Maria's well-being." My phone buzzed again. This time it was my law school mentor, Professor Chen. "Just got off the phone with your mother. She's very concerned about your pregnancy delusions. Said you've been fixating on having a baby, but your body won't cooperate. Is everything okay?" I wanted to scream. Every avenue of my life was being systematically poisoned. I looked at Detective Rodriguez, then at the social worker who still wouldn't meet my eyes, then at James in the hallway with Daniela still whispering in his ear. "The evaluation," I said suddenly. "I'll do it. I'll prove I'm competent." The lawyer smiled. "Excellent. Dr. Margaret Whitfield will perform the evaluation. She's the best in the state." The name sounded familiar. Then it hit me. Mom's Book Club. Dr. Whitfield had been coming to our house for monthly meetings for over a decade, but it was too late to take it back. The administrator was already making arrangements, and my mother's smile through the glass had turned triumphant. The nurse squeezed my hand as she checked my IV one more time. She leaned close, pretending to adjust my pillow. "Whatever happens, don't sign anything else," she whispered. "And check your phone's location settings. Someone's been tracking you." As everyone filed out to make arrangements for my evaluation, I noticed something else. Daniela was showing James her phone again, and this time I caught a glimpse of the screen. It was a text conversation, but not recent ones. These were from 2 years ago, when James and I had first started dating, and I'd mentioned that maybe someday, far in the future, we might want kids. She was building a case that I'd always wanted children, that this was all my own frustrated desire manifesting as paranoia. And from the look on James's face, it was working. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for tomorrow morning. As I lay in that hospital bed, watching my mother orchestrate my destruction through a pane of glass, I realized the true horror of my situation. She'd been planning this for years, waiting for the perfect moment to spring her trap, and I'd walked right into it. The psychiatric evaluation was set for 8 a.m. I spent the night rehearsing answers in my head, trying to anticipate Dr. Whitfield's questions. The nurse from earlier shift had slipped me a sedative, whispering that I'd need rest to appear stable, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's triumphant smile through that glass. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up with an Instagram notification. Daniela had posted a photo from last month's family dinner. There I was, slumped in my chair, eyes glazed. The caption read, "Praying for my sister's fertility journey. Some women struggle more than others to accept their maternal calling." Posted 3 weeks ago, but I was just seeing it now. The comments were full of sympathy for her and concern for me. I scrolled through her feed with growing horror. She'd been documenting my journey for months. Photos of me at family gatherings, always looking tired or distracted, captions about my baby fever and fertility struggles. In one video, I was playing with her youngest daughter, and Daniela had added text overlay. "She'll be such a good mom when she stops fighting nature." My work email pinged, then pinged again and again. I opened it to find my inbox flooded with messages. The subject lines made my blood run cold. "Thinking of you during this difficult time. Take all the time you need. Your health comes first." My mother had sent an email to my entire firm from my account. I read it with shaking hands. "Dear colleagues, I'm writing to inform you that I'll be taking an indefinite leave of absence to address some personal health matters. As many of you know, I've been struggling with fertility issues and the emotional toll has become overwhelming. My family is helping me get the treatment I need. Please redirect all urgent matters to the managing partners. Thank you for your understanding during this difficult time. Maria." The timestamp showed it was sent at 2:47 a.m. While I was lying here wide awake. I tried to log into my work account to send a retraction, but my password had been changed. My hands fumbled with the password reset, but the recovery email had been switched to one I didn't recognize. My mother had locked me out of my own professional life. 3 of my clients had already responded with supportive messages. Women I'd helped escape abusive situations, now believing I was having a mental health crisis. One wrote, "I always sensed you carried deep pain about motherhood. Please don't let it consume you like it almost consumed me." The irony made me want to vomit. By 6 a.m., the psychiatric ward's morning shift was arriving. I watched through my door's window as staff members whispered to each other, glancing in my direction. News traveled fast in hospitals. They all knew I was the woman who'd attacked her mother for trying to help with fertility treatments. A breakfast tray arrived, but I couldn't eat. My hands shook too badly to hold the plastic spoon steady. When I tried to drink the juice, I noticed a bitter aftertaste and set it down immediately. After what I'd learned about the drugging at family dinners, I couldn't trust anything. Detective Rodriguez arrived at 7:30, looking exhausted. "I've been investigating all night," he said quietly, pulling his chair close. "Your mother's name appears in several concerning patterns at that fertility clinic. But Maria," he hesitated, "the evidence is complicated. She's been very careful to make everything look like loving family support." "What kind of patterns?" I asked. "Young women, mostly from troubled backgrounds, who suddenly decide to become egg donors or surrogates after meeting with clinic staff. Your mother often handles their intake paperwork." He showed me a folder. "But here's the problem. They all sign consent forms. They all pass psychological evaluations. On paper, everything looks legitimate, because the system is designed to protect the clinic, not the women," I said. He nodded grimly. "I need more evidence to build a case. But right now, I'm more concerned about getting you through this evaluation safely." Dr. Whitfield arrived precisely at 8 a.m., carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was exactly as I remembered from Mom's book club meetings. Silver-haired, professionally dressed, with reading glasses on a pearl chain. "Maria, dear," she said warmly, "your mother has told me so much about your struggles." Detective Rodriguez started to object, but she held up a manicured hand. "I'm afraid this evaluation must be conducted privately. Standard protocol." "I'm staying," he said firmly. "Then I'll have to note in my report that the patient required police supervision, which suggests violent tendencies." Her smile never wavered. "Your choice, detective." He looked at me, jaw clenched. I nodded slightly. We both knew she'd already made up her mind about her report. Having him removed would just give her more ammunition. After he left, Dr. Whitfield settled into the visitor's chair and opened her briefcase. Inside, I glimpsed what looked like completed forms. The evaluation results, already written. "Now then," she began, pulling out a tablet. "Let's talk about your relationship with motherhood." For the next hour, every question was a trap. When I explained I'd chosen career over children, she typed notes about defensive rejection of femininity. When I mentioned helping women escape reproductive coercion, she murmured about projection of internal conflicts. When I tried to tell her about the forced injection, she asked if I often felt persecuted by maternal figures. "Your mother mentioned you've been playing with dolls recently," she said, studying me over her glasses. "What? No, I haven't. She found them in your apartment. Baby dolls, hidden in your closet." She showed me a photo on her tablet. 3 dolls I'd never seen before, tucked behind my winter coats. It's quite common for women experiencing fertility grief to regress to childhood coping mechanisms. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. The dolls were positioned carefully, blurry, as if someone had staged them. One was holding a tiny bottle. Another had a miniature diaper bag. The third was wrapped in a blanket that looked handmade. Those aren't mine, I said. Denial is also common, Doctor. Whitfield replied, typing rapidly. Maria, there's no shame in wanting children, but when that desire becomes so overwhelming that you lash out at family members trying to help, she injected me with fertility hormones against my will. She tried to give you a vitamin supplement, according to witnesses. You became violent and had to be restrained. She tilted her head sympathetically. The mind can play tricks when we're under stress. Sometimes we misinterpret loving gestures as attacks. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. A large withdrawal from my savings account. When I tried to check it, Dr. Whitfield reached over and gently took the phone. Let's focus on our conversation, she said, placing it in her briefcase. Tell me about your jealousy toward Daniela. I'm not jealous of my sister. 7 successful pregnancies, a loving family, the admiration of your community. She leaned forward. Meanwhile, you've dedicated your life to preventing other women from experiencing motherhood. Don't you see the connection? Every protest I made was twisted into evidence of my instability. By the time she finished, she painted a picture of a woman so consumed by fertility grief that she constructed an elaborate persecution fantasy, rather than admit her own desires. I'm recommending a 72-hour hold for observation, she announced, closing her tablet. With continued therapy, I believe we can help you work through these delusions. You can't do this, I said. I know my rights. Of course you do, dear. You've spent years studying law to compensate for what you perceive as your feminine failures. She stood, smoothing her skirt. The hold begins immediately. Psychiatric transport will be here within the hour. After she left, I grabbed the room's phone to call someone, anyone, but who? My firm thought I was having a breakdown. My boyfriend was being poisoned against me by my sister. My bank accounts were being drained. Even my mentor had been reached by my mother's campaign. The transport team arrived while I was still holding the dead phone. 2 orderlies with kind faces and firm grips. They spoke to me like I was fragile, dangerous, unpredictable. The nurse who'd helped me earlier was nowhere to be seen. As they prepared me for transport, I saw my mother in the hallway. She was talking to Dr. Whitfield, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The concerned mother, bravely handling her daughter's mental health crisis. Other staff members patted her shoulder sympathetically. The psychiatric ward was in a separate building, connected by an underground tunnel. The fluorescent lights hurt my eyes as they wheeled me through. The orderly pushing my wheelchair hummed tunelessly. The sound echoed off the concrete walls, mixing with the squeak of wheels and the distant clang of doors. My new room was small and sterile. White walls, a narrow bed with restraint straps visible, a small window with reinforced glass. They gave me paper scrubs to wear and took my belongings for safety reasons. The nurse doing intake was young, efficient, and clearly uncomfortable. Any history of mental illness? She asked. Number of sewer slide attempts? Number of violent episodes? No. Wait, they're saying I attacked my mother, but I'll put down one recent episode. She typed quickly. Dr. Whitfield's orders say you're to have no visitors except family for the first 24 hours. No phone calls. It's for your own stability. That's illegal. I have the right to contact my lawyer. She bit her lip. I'll have to check with the attending physician about that. But the attending physician was conveniently unavailable, as were the patient advocates, the ward administrator. Everyone who might help was somehow unreachable. I was trapped in a bureaucratic maze designed to look like treatment. My mother arrived that afternoon with a suitcase. I brought you some comfortable clothes, she announced, setting it on the bed, and some photos of Daniela's babies. I thought they might help you remember what we're working toward. She unpacked methodically. Maternity clothes, all in my size. Prenatal vitamins, a journal titled My Fertility Journey, with the first several pages already filled out in handwriting that looked almost like mine. Photos of babies I'd never met, labeled with names like your nephew and your godson. The retrieval is scheduled for next week, she said conversationally, hanging up a dress clearly designed for a pregnant woman. Dr. Martinez at the clinic is very optimistic about your egg quality. 28 is still young enough for excellent results. I'm not consenting to egg retrieval. Of course not, dear. Not in your current state. She smoothed the dress on its hanger. That's why I've petitioned for temporary medical conservatorship, just until you're thinking clearly again. She pulled out a folder thick with documents. Legal forms, medical papers, psychiatric evaluations. My signature on half of them, forged but convincing. A paper trail stretching back months, documenting my supposed descent into fertility obsession. Your work friends have been so supportive, she continued. Several have written letters for the conservatorship hearing. They've noticed your preoccupation with pregnancy for some time, apparently. All those pro bono cases for pregnant women, they thought you were working through something personal. I watched her redecorate my psychiatric room into a nursery in waiting. She'd brought a small ultrasound photo in a frame, labeled Baby Gonzalez with next month's date, a mobile with tiny elephants, a book about pregnancy nutrition, each item carefully chosen to support her narrative. Daniela sends her love, Mom said, pulling out her phone. She's been so worried about you. She showed me a video. Daniela in a hospital bed, surrounded by flowers, cradling her newest baby. Hi, Maria, my sister said to the camera, her voice weak but warm. I just wanted you to know that I love you. And when you're ready, there's a wonderful couple waiting to give your babies all the love in the world, just like mine are getting. Don't fight this, okay? Let Mom help you. She only wants what's best. The baby in her arms started crying. Daniela winced as she adjusted her position, and I saw the flash of pain across her face. The camera shook slightly. Whoever was filming had noticed too. Then the video cut off. She's so brave, Mom said, tucking the phone away. 5 pregnancies now, and she never complains, unlike some people. A commotion in the hallway interrupted her. Raised voices, then the sound of security being called. Through the small window in my door, I saw the nurse who'd helped me in the ICU being escorted out by security. She was carrying a box of personal items, her face flushed with anger. My mother followed my gaze and smiled. Oh yes, she was let go this morning. HIPAA violations, I heard. Sharing patient information without authorization. Such a shame. She seemed like a nice girl. The message was clear. Anyone who helped me would pay the price. After Mom left, I tried to sleep but couldn't. The bed was too firm, the room too bright, the sounds of the ward too unsettling. Someone down the hall was crying. Another patient kept asking for their mother. The night nurse did checks every hour, shining a flashlight through the window. Around midnight, a different nurse slipped into my room. She was older with graying hair and tired eyes. I don't have long, she whispered, but I knew your nurse friend. She asked me to give you this. She pressed a small piece of paper into my hand. A phone number, nothing more. Call it when you can, she said. Not from here. They monitor the ward phones, but when you get out, she glanced nervously at the door. There are more of us than you think. Women who've seen what happens at that clinic. We've been too scared to speak up. She left as quickly as she'd come. I memorized the number and then tore the paper into tiny pieces, flushing them down the toilet. Evidence of conspiracy, my mother would call it. Proof of paranoid delusions, Dr. Whitfield would say. The next morning brought group therapy. 6 women in a circle, sharing their struggles. The therapist, a young man with an earnest face, encouraged us to explore our relationships with femininity. When my turn came, I stayed silent. Anything I said would be documented, twisted, used against me. Maria is working through some fertility grief, the therapist explained to the group. Sometimes that manifests as rejection of traditional female roles. One of the other women, barely out of her teens, looked at me with sympathy. I get it, she said. I used to think I didn't want kids either, but therapy helped me realize I was just scared of not being good enough. I wanted to scream that not wanting children was a valid choice, that femininity wasn't defined by reproduction, that I was here because I'd helped too many women escape exactly this kind of pressure, but I just nodded and let them draw their own conclusions. Lunch was in a common room with barred windows. I picked at the food, still paranoid about substances. My table mate, an older woman with hollow eyes, leaned over conspiratorially. "First time?" she asked. I nodded. "Word of advice, agree with everything they say. Fastest way out is through compliance." She stirred her pudding absently. "I've been here 6 times. Keep fighting my daughter about custody of my grandkids, but this time I'm gonna play along. Tell them I understand boundaries, accept my role." Her laugh was bitter. "Whatever gets me out, right?" That afternoon, I had individual therapy with Dr. Whitfield. She'd set up a permanent office on the ward to better serve my patients. The walls were covered with inspirational posters about motherhood and healing. "Your mother tells me you were asking about the retrieval procedure," she began. I wasn't. "It's natural to be curious. Many women find that understanding the medical process helps alleviate their fears." She pulled out a brochure from Blessed Beginnings. "The clinic has an excellent success rate, and the couple your mother has selected is just lovely. He's a doctor, she's a teacher. They've been trying for 5 years. I'm not donating my eggs." "Of course not. You're donating the possibility of life. There's a difference." She made a note on her pad. "Maria, I want you to try something. Close your eyes and imagine holding your biological child. Even if another woman carries them, they'll still be yours in the way that matters." I kept my eyes open, staring at her diplomas on the wall, all from respectable institutions, all legitimate. This wasn't some back alley operation. It was a fully licensed psychiatrist in an accredited hospital doing exactly what the system allowed her to do. "Resistance is normal," she continued, "but I think deep down, you know your mother is right. You've spent so many years fighting your nature that you've convinced yourself the fight is the purpose. But what if you just let go?" James came during visiting hours, but I was told family only. Daniela arrived instead, moving slowly, one hand supporting her belly. She'd brought her 5 children, who fidgeted uncomfortably in the sterile visiting room. "Aunt Maria is sick," she told them, "but she's getting better." The oldest, a girl about 6, studied me solemnly. "Grandma says you're going to have babies soon too." "That's right, sweetheart," Daniela said before I could respond. "Aunt Maria just needs some help remembering how much she wants them." She'd brought photos from our childhood, the 2 of us with those horrible pregnancy suits, but she'd edited them somehow. In these versions, I was smiling, playing along, happy. "Remember how you used to name your pretend babies?" she asked. "You had a whole list. Emma, Sophia, little James Jr. if it was a boy." "That was you," I said quietly. "Those were your names." "No, Maria." She pulled out a notebook, weathered and familiar. My childhood diary. She opened it to pages I didn't remember writing. Lists of baby names and handwriting that looked like mine but wasn't. "See? You've always wanted this. The stress just made you forget." The children watched our exchange with wide eyes, learning, absorbing, seeing how Aunt Maria was being helped to remember her true purpose. The oldest kept glancing at her mother's swollen belly, then at my flat stomach, confusion clear on her face. After they left, I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. The fluorescent lights made me look pale, hollow, like the other women on the ward. I wondered how many of them were here for similar reasons, how many had fought too hard against expectations and ended up labeled as crazy. That evening, there was an incident. A new patient, young and terrified, had been brought in screaming about being forced to have a baby. Security had to restrain her while nurses administered sedatives. Through my cracked door, I heard fragments of her story. Religious parents, pregnancy pact, escape attempt. By morning, she was calm, compliant, sitting in group therapy talking about how she'd misunderstood her family's love. "Sometimes we perceive care as control," the therapist said, nodding approvingly. "But with medication and therapy, we can learn to accept support." I watched her carefully, the slight tremor in her hands, the delayed responses, the way she agreed with everything, even contradictory statements. They'd medicated her into submission, and everyone pretended it was healing. My own medication arrived with breakfast, just to help with the anxiety, the nurse explained. I recognized the pills, mild sedatives, nothing too serious. But I knew they were just the beginning. Refuse too long, and they'd find reasons for stronger interventions. I palmed the pills, pretended to swallow. Later, I'd flush them like the phone number, but I couldn't keep this up forever. Eventually, they'd do mouth checks, inject medications, find ways to ensure compliance. The conservatorship hearing was in 3 days. Dr. Whitfield assured me it was just a formality, and that I didn't need to attend. "Your mother will handle everything. You just focus on getting better." But I knew what that hearing meant. Once she had conservatorship, she could consent to anything on my behalf. Egg retrieval, hormone treatments, even forced pregnancy if she found a suitable way to frame it as therapeutic. That night, I lay awake planning. Not escape, that would only prove my instability, but compliance. Strategic, calculated compliance that might get me released before the hearing. I'd have to become what they wanted to see. A woman who'd accepted her true desires, who understood her mother's love, who was ready to embrace motherhood. The performance would have to be perfect. One slip, one moment of resistance, and I'd be here indefinitely. But if I could convince them I'd had a breakthrough, shown proper gratitude for their help, maybe, just maybe, I could get out in time to fight the conservatorship. I thought about all the women I'd helped over the years, how many had been in similar positions, trapped by family expectations, medical systems, legal frameworks that prioritized reproduction over autonomy. I'd fought for them in courtrooms and shelters. Now I had to fight for myself with the only weapons left, manipulation and lies. The irony wasn't lost on me. To prove I was sane, I had to act crazy. To maintain my autonomy, I had to surrender it. To escape my mother's control, I had to embrace everything she wanted me to be. Tomorrow, I'd start my performance, cry in therapy about my empty womb. Thank Dr. Whitfield for helping me see the truth. Ask Daniela for advice about egg donation. Let my mother dress me in those maternity clothes and tell her how right they felt. Every word would burn. Every gesture would betray everything I believed. But it was the only way out that didn't involve a needle in my arm and stirrups in an operating room. The night nurse did her check, flashlight sweeping across my face. I kept my breathing even, feigning sleep. Down the hall, someone was crying again, or maybe still. In places like this, the crying never really stopped. 3 days. I had 3 days to convince them I was cured of the terrible affliction of not wanting children. 3 days to perform the most important act of my life. The real tragedy was that I knew I could do it. Years of watching Daniela had taught me exactly what to say, how to act, what they wanted to see. I could become the perfect patient, grateful for their intervention, eager to fulfill my biological destiny. And maybe that was the worst part. Not that they were trying to break me, but that I knew exactly how to let them think they'd succeeded. The next morning, I woke with newfound determination. During group therapy, I raised my hand for the first time. "I think I understand now," I said, letting my voice crack. "All these years, I've been running from what I really wanted." The therapist leaned forward eagerly. "Tell us more, Maria." I described a fabricated dream about holding a baby, watching the other women nod knowingly. When Dr. Whitfield arrived for our session, I was ready. "I want to apologize," I began, twisting my hands in my lap. "You were right. I've been using my career to avoid facing my fertility grief." She practically glowed. "This is wonderful progress, Maria." For the next hour, I fed her exactly what she wanted to hear. How jealous I'd been of Daniela's pregnancies. How my work with reproductive rights was really about controlling what I couldn't have. By the end, she was typing furiously, documenting my breakthrough. "I think we should tell your mother," she said. "She'll be so relieved." When Mom arrived that afternoon, I was wearing one of the maternity dresses she'd brought. The fabric hung loose on my frame, but I kept rubbing my flat stomach the way I'd seen Daniela do countless times. "Oh, sweetie," Mom Mom said, tears in her eyes. You look so natural. I let her hug me, fighting the urge to push her away. I'm sorry I fought you, I whispered. You were just trying to help. She pulled back, studying my face. For a moment, I thought she saw through the act. Then she smiled and pulled out her phone. Daniela needs to hear this, she said, already dialing. I spent the rest of the day performing, asking Mom about the egg retrieval process, looking at photos of the couple who wanted my eggs, even practicing breathing exercises from those horrible childhood sessions. Dr. Whitfield was so impressed that she mentioned possibly expediting my release. If you continue showing this level of insight, we might not need the full 72 hours. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow was crucial. I needed to maintain the performance while somehow getting access to a phone or computer. The conservatorship hearing was in 2 days, and I had to find a way to contest it. The next morning brought a surprise. James arrived during visiting hours, and this time they let him in. He looked exhausted, conflicted. Your mom said you're doing better, he said carefully. I wanted to scream the truth, but I knew they were probably monitoring us. Instead, I reached for his hand. I've been so confused, I said, but I'm starting to understand what I really want. He studied my face, and I tried to communicate silently. His eyes widened slightly. Did he understand? Maybe when you get out, we can talk about our future, he said slowly. I'd like that, I replied, squeezing his hand 3 times. Our old signal for play along. After he left, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe he hadn't completely bought Daniela's lies. That afternoon, I convinced the ward staff to let me use the computer in the day room to research fertility options. Instead, I quickly logged into my email through a web browser. My password still worked on my personal account. I fired off a message to a colleague who specialized in conservatorship law, keeping it vague but urgent. Then I checked my bank accounts. More money had been withdrawn. At this rate, I'd be broke within a week. Finding good information? A nurse asked, approaching. I quickly switched tabs to a fertility clinic website. Just learning about the process, I said brightly. She smiled and moved on. I had maybe 5 more minutes before someone got suspicious. I navigated to the court website and found the conservatorship filing. My mother had claimed I was gravely disabled due to fertility-related psychosis. The hearing was scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I memorized the case number and courtroom, then cleared the browser history. If I could just get released in the morning, I might make it to court. That evening, Dr. Whitfield called an emergency session. My stomach dropped. Had they discovered my computer use? Your mother told me you've been asking about specific fertility clinics, she said. I'm so pleased with your progress that I'm recommending immediate release. I blinked. Really? You'll need to continue outpatient therapy, of course, but I think you're ready to take the next steps in your journey. She smiled. Your mother has already made an appointment at Blessed Beginnings for tomorrow afternoon, the same time as the conservatorship hearing. That's wonderful, I managed to say. I was released the next morning at 9 a.m. Mom was waiting with a bouquet of flowers and a gift bag. I bought you some prenatal vitamins, she said, handing me the bag. Just to prepare your body. I smiled and accepted them, already planning my next move. Mom, I need to stop by my apartment first. Change clothes, feel normal again. Her smile faltered. Oh, but we have appointments. Please, I said, channeling Daniela's manipulation tactics. I want to look my best when we go to the clinic. This is such an important day. That worked. She drove me to my apartment, though she insisted on coming inside. While she waited in the living room, I locked myself in the bathroom and called the colleague I'd emailed. Maria, I got your message. The hearing is at 2 p.m., right? I'll be there. I can't make it, I whispered. My mother will have me at the fertility clinic. Can you file an emergency motion? Without you present, it's harder, but I have evidence, I interrupted. Check my work email. Password is, I gave her my credentials. There's a folder labeled personal. Everything's there. I hung up as Mom knocked on the door. Everything okay, sweetie? Just nervous. I called back. I emerged to find her rearranging my bookshelf, removing my law texts and replacing them with pregnancy guides she'd brought. Much better, she said. Now, let's get you changed. She'd brought an outfit, a flowing dress that suggested fertility and femininity. I put it on, playing the part. We arrived at Blessed Beginnings at 1:30. The waiting room was full of hopeful couples and young women who looked vaguely disconnected. I recognized the look from my years of advocacy work. Patricia, a nurse greeted my mother warmly. And this must be Maria. We've heard so much about you. They whisked me back for preliminary testing, while Mom filled out paperwork. The nurse chattered about success rates and happy families while drawing my blood. Your mother says you're eager to help a special couple, she said. Very eager, I lied. At 2:15, I asked to use the bathroom. Instead, I slipped out a side door and called a rideshare. The courthouse was only 10 minutes away. I burst into the courtroom at 2:25. The judge was already speaking, my mother at the petitioner's table with her lawyer. My colleague stood at the respondent's table, looking relieved to see me. Your Honor, she said quickly, my client has arrived. Mom's face went white, then red. She's supposed to be at the clinic. Interesting, the judge said dryly. Ms. Gonzalez, are you here of your own free will? Yes, Your Honor, and I'd like to contest this conservatorship petition. The next hour was brutal. Mom's lawyer presented Dr. Whitfield's evaluation, the psychiatric hold, my confession of wanting children. But my colleague countered with the evidence I'd gathered, the forged signatures, the timeline of Mom's planning, the pattern of coercion at the clinic. Your Honor, I said when given the chance to speak, I don't have fertility grief. I have a mother who's built her entire identity around her daughter's reproductive capacity. She drugged me, forged documents, and orchestrated an elaborate campaign to destroy my credibility when I refused to participate in her breeding agenda. Mom started crying. I just wanted grandchildren. Is that so wrong? You have 5 grandchildren, I pointed out. Through Daniela, who can barely walk anymore because of what you've done to her body. She chose that life, did she? Or did you condition her from age 8 to believe she had no other value? The judge called for order. After reviewing the evidence, including the hair follicle test results my colleague had subpoenaed, he made his decision. The petition for conservatorship is denied, he said firmly. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Ms. Patricia Gonzalez, you are to have no contact with your daughter Maria. Mom wailed. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but the decision was final. As we left the courthouse, I saw Daniela in the parking lot, struggling to get out of her minivan with her swollen belly. She'd brought all 5 children. How could you? She called out. Mom loves us. She loves what our bodies can do for her, I replied. There's a difference. The oldest child, the 6-year-old girl, tugged on Daniela's dress. Mommy, why is Grandma crying? Daniela didn't answer. She couldn't. Because how do you explain to a child that they're being groomed for the same fate? I walked away, my colleague beside me. What now? She asked. Now I file a complaint with the medical board about Blessed Beginnings, I said, and I start documenting everything for the civil suit. What about your sister? I looked back at Daniela, still standing by her van, children clustered around her like shields. I can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, but maybe I can protect her daughters. That evening, James came to my apartment. We sat on my couch, the same one where Mom had probably planted those dolls, and talked for hours. I almost believed them, he admitted. The texts, the photos, the stories, it all seemed so real. That's how good manipulators work, I said. They take a grain of truth and build a mountain of lies. He stayed the night. Not romantically, neither of us were ready for that. But having someone there who believed me, who saw through the gaslighting, made me feel human again. The next few weeks were a blur of legal filings. Therapy, real therapy, not Dr. Whitfield's manipulation, and slowly reclaiming my life. My firm welcomed me back after I explained the situation. Several of my clients reached out, apologizing for doubting me. The investigation into Blessed Beginnings revealed what I'd suspected, a pattern of targeting vulnerable women, often referred by concerned family members like my mother. The clinic was shut down pending review. Mom tried to contact me through flying monkeys, mutual acquaintances, distant relatives, even my childhood priest. Each time, I documented it for the restraining order file. Daniela gave birth to her 6th child 6 weeks later. I heard through the grapevine that there were complications, bad ones. She survived, but barely. The doctors told her no more pregnancies. I wanted to feel vindicated, but I just felt sad. She was my sister, despite everything. And now she was facing the reality of a body destroyed in service of someone else's vision. 3 months after the conservatorship hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Aunt Maria? A small voice said. It's Emma, Daniela's oldest daughter. Hi, sweetheart, I said carefully. Is everything okay? Mommy's sick again, and Grandma keeps talking about when I'm older and can have babies. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to be like Mommy. My heart broke and soared simultaneously. You don't have to be, Emma. You can be whatever you want. Can I come see you sometime? Mommy says you're dangerous, but you don't seem dangerous. I'd love that, I said. But we need to make sure it's okay with your mom first. It wasn't okay, of course. But Emma kept calling secretly from a friend's phone or the school office. I became her safe harbor, the aunt who told her she had value beyond her uterus. 6 months later, at a family funeral, not Mom's side, thankfully, I saw Daniela. She was in a wheelchair, her body finally refusing to cooperate with her martyrdom. She looked at me across the church, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister. Not the breeding machine Mom had created, but the girl who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms. She didn't speak to me, but she didn't look away either. A year after everything happened, I was at a coffee shop when a young woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. You're Maria Gonzalez, she said. You helped my friend escape her family. They were trying to force her to be a surrogate for her sister. I'm glad she got out, I said. She did, because you fought back and made it public. She paused. I'm supposed to start fertility treatments next week. My mom's been planning it for years, but after seeing what happened to you, what you survived, I think I'm going to run instead. I gave her my card. Call me if you need help. She left, and I sat there thinking about cycles, how they perpetuate until someone breaks them, how the breaking hurts everyone involved, how sometimes the only victory is preventing the next generation from suffering the same fate. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma, now 7 and sneaking her mom's phone. Grandma says I'm going to be a wonderful mother someday. I told her I want to be a lawyer like you instead. She got really mad. I smiled and typed back, good for you, kiddo. Stand your ground. The war wasn't over. It never really ends when family is involved, but battles had been won. Boundaries had been set, and somewhere out there, girls were learning they had options beyond what their bodies could produce for others. That had to be enough.